Hello and welcome to a special Whiskers TV. We're going to be reviewing the Nottingham Panthers season between myself, Paul and Aaron. But first we're going to sort of summarise the season and how we felt it went. So who'd like to go first?
Well, in our first show that we did many months ago, we were sat opposite where we're sat now, and I predicted that we'd win the league because I thought we'd build on, the previous season. Obviously we didn't, but I think the highlight has to be the Challenge Cup. Obviously I think no team, no person can really underestimate what it is and what it has taken to win 5 cups in a row.
And you win any trophy, it's a good thing. It's you can't just go, oh, it's been a dreadful season, but we won a trophy. There's 7 other teams that swap with us.
I think for me it's just disappointing not really ever seeing the team that Corey recruited on the ice for a long period of time. And I think that's because you're trying to, which we will do, judge players and talk about players, and have we seen them at their full potential as a team? That's what's disappointing from my point of view.
Only on very, very rare occasions, I think. And that's it. That's what makes a discussion like we're going to have now both harder and, to be honest, more meaningless, because we don't know what Corey was setting out to do with this team. And obviously, you set out to win stuff, but how he saw the team going, what the people's real roles were, because so many of them didn't get the chance to show it.
And I think for me, two particular highlights stand out for me. The Challenge Cup is the obvious one, and we've waxed lyrical about that enough, I think. But that was a fantastic, one of the best Panthers evenings I think I've ever experienced. The other one for me was the home game against Riga in the Continental Cup, where that was the sort of fire and passion you wanted to see, where every single player on the ice really wanted to win that game, and you could see that they all went hell-bent on winning that game.
But that you're right, but that weekend was sort of a microcosm of our season. We had bits where we were really good and bits straight after, or in this case straight before, where we were really bad.
Well, we all remember Corey's interview with Owen after the Bipolo game.
I think Owen still wakes up in the middle of the night having nightmares about that. And I think the thing that I said it at the time, the thing that stood out for me out of that question was, that interview, was when Owen asked him whether the people in the team in the dressing room felt the same, and Nielsen said, "I don't know." That worried me. I mean, the one thing you can say about this team is that the effort was always there. I thought, you can't fault them for that, but the constant changes, rightly, wrongly, some forced, some not, really haven't helped. But for me, I don't think that we can lay the blame for the way the season went entirely at the door of the injuries. I think a lot of the players that were brought in weren't right for one reason or another, and I think that did cause us as many problems as the injuries almost.
Well, we'll go through each of the squad members that finished the season. So it seems sensible to start with the netminders. Craig Kowalski, obviously a huge miss for most of the season with injury, and I think that was one of the factors which led to such a disappointing league campaign. He is the best netminder in the league. That is my opinion, but it's also a lot of other people's opinion.
As well.
I mean, thankfully he's re-signed for next season, and you could see the reaction from around the league when he re-signed. It was like, oh no, they've not got him again. Because he every night he gives us a chance to win.
Well, you go out there having the confidence that your netminder is going to put in a solid performance. I mean, I've only really ever seen K-Wall have an absolute, what you would maybe class as a shocker, and that was away to Sheffield, and I think it was 9-4
last season.
We did a Cats Whiskers overtime, and he just did not have a good game. But like I say, that is the one time that I can really remember K-Well having he's, like you say, he's the best netminder in the league. I was worried about who we would be able to get after, with him potentially not re-signing, but I think the fact that he has re-signed, it automatically gives you confidence going into next season. And I think you could see the difference between when he was out. No disrespect to Conway or even Green when he played, but there's good netminders, and then there's the A range, and K-Well is in that range.
He's the sort of netminder that you look at and think he can win us a game on his own. And that you look at that, a game where maybe everybody else has a bit of an off night. If your netminder's playing, with that kind of quality, you've got more of a chance.
Looking at the backup, obviously Dan Green, he's done the job for years. He's never really let us down. But it is, for me, backup netminder for any elite league team. It's the hardest job, because basically, you're going to spend the majority of the season opening the gate, and whenever he's come in, I think he's done all right. Of backups, I think he's one of the better ones out there. And I, to be honest, if he came back next season, I wouldn't have any problem with it whatsoever.
Yeah, the point is, where are you going to find somebody who's going to, want to take that responsibility on? Something like Gospel. I know a lot of people say Gospel should be with us now. I don't think he should. I think he needs a couple of years somewhere where he'll get the ice time.
Yeah.
And I think the thing, say with Dan Green, is that Corey Nilsson isn't afraid of putting him in. Look how we've talked about Hull's backup, who they were beating people 7-2, and he didn't get a game in the last 5 minutes. Surely that's counterproductive for both of them. But so Corey's obviously got faith in Dan, so I think you'll see him back here next season, and it really doesn't bother me at all.
I think he's improved as well, though.
Yes.
That's one thing I would say. I think especially this season, every time he's come on, I think he's made some saves that if it was K-Well would be raving about, and it's like you've mentioned, it's a tough job. But I also think the relationship between K-Well and Green is, from what we know, is a good relationship, and I think you have to have that as your netminders, because you can't have a backup that's sort of jealous of not getting ice time, or jealous of the attention that K-Well gets, because let's be honest, K-Well gets a lot of attention from us and other teams, fans and players, etc. But I'd happily have him back. Who are you going to really go and get? And I think it's for me, it's Green is somebody that we need to keep for the next couple of years, and then Gospel is somebody that we need to bring and nurture through to maybe replace him in a couple of seasons.
Okay, moving on to the defence then. So we'll start, I think, with Tom Norton. His first real pro season where he was getting good amounts of ice time, and I think there's been a massive improvement from the start of the season. I don't think he lets us down. He does the simple things well, and he doesn't try to overcomplicate things, and that's what I like about him.
And I think that's what he's learned. For me, he's been one of the positives that we can take out of this season. How he's improved. He's improved to the point where he's confident enough to start telling other people what to do. He does, like we've talked about Werner doing, where he'll be skating backwards, quarterbacking the rest of the players, here, there, and there. And I've seen Norton doing that this year. And I think where if he makes a mistake, if it's anywhere, is sometimes he'll step up too much.
Yes.
But with the same token, somebody with the experience of Danny Myers does that, and very nearly got caught out yesterday. On one where he stepped right up. The player just went round it. So, but Norton, he's obviously learning from the people he's playing with, and I think he's improved immeasurably. I honestly don't understand why there are people who say he's not good enough now.
For me, it's he has improved, and as the season has gone on, I think probably in his defence, on most of the the games I've seen, he was usually on the line with Henley, and I think the disruption that obviously happens with Henley also affects Norton, because you don't get the you don't sort of get the fluidity of working with your line mate, etc.
You build up a partnership, don't you, when he's not there?
That was one of our strengths last season for me, especially the Weaver-Beckett line was so consistent and so strong. So in Norton's defence there, but for me it's you've got a young British defenceman, you have to throw him in at some time. You have to give him a full season, and I think for his first season he hasn't really put a foot wrong. Don't get me wrong, I would still say he can be a lot better. But
you can see there is room for improvement.
And you have to again say this is where Corey Nielsen might differ from other coaches, because he's actually gone with saying, right, well, you are going to be one of my defencemen this year. You're not going to be on a two-way deal or whatever. I have the faith into you, and he's repaid that. So I hope he's back.
I think Corey's never been frightened to bring young British players through and nurture them.
And will that continue?
And Stevie Lee is a prime example.
We'll move on to Stevie Lee.
But one thing before we do, if we're looking for positives, I think Tom is one of the very few ever-present players we've had. In this season of injuries, suspensions, whatever. He's been there every night. I think it's only him and Weaver, and probably Dan Green as well.
Yeah, I think that's about it. Yeah. So moving on to Steve Lee, who was another one whose season was disrupted by injury, so at a really important time of the year. But for me, I think the games he played, I think Steve Lee he's had the best season he's had for the Panthers. I think he actually grew. He became one of the leaders on defence. Yes. He wasn't just the fifth or sixth defenceman. He was a leader on defence. He was there. He was putting the stick in. He was putting his body on the line. He was saying, "No, you are not getting the puck past me."
His role on the team has changed, and he's the one who's changed it. He's gone from being, obviously, the Norton's the young one now, but so. Steve Lee's obviously, I've got to step up here. I've got to improve. I've got to take on more of a role, and he has, and he's done it well.
Yeah, I think for me, I just look at him as a permanent fixture in the Panthers lineup. Now he's not this young Stevie Lee that's has this great potential. Yes, he still has great potential, but
the potential is now being realised. I think.
You move from like that Tom Norton stage, which we've just talked about, and then you move into the sort of level that I think Stevie Lee is at now, where pretty much every night he's consistent. He works his socks off, and he like you say, he says, you're not getting it past me, and he put his body on the line. Look at the injuries that he's had this season. A few concussions, broken nose or eye socket, whatever it was, and I think that sort of disrupted it towards the end of his season a little bit, which it's bound to. But I can only see him coming back, if he does, which I hope, obviously, stronger and actually grow as hopefully one of the consistent Panthers Brits.
Okay. Final British player on defence is, of course, the evergreen Jonathan Weaver, ever present.
Yeah.
Probably have far too many minutes each game than he should have this season, but by heck, he's got it. The hockey brain that man has is phenomenal.
He's losing the pace, but what he's lost there, he hasn't lost. Upstairs.
His transitional play is by far the best on the team, by a country mile.
Yeah. Do you think that some of that is because he used to be a forward?
Yeah, possibly so. His transitional play's always been good, but I think it really stood out this season. His fluidity of movement from defence to attack is just fantastic, and his passing and stick handling is fantastic.
So it's not bad for a player that Coventry had given up on 2 years ago.
I know, yeah. Well, I think we showed how good he was when his ice time was managed last season when we won the title. And okay, he's had to put the minutes in this year because of injuries, and he may have got caught out of pace a few times, but I I'd have him back next season without any shadow of a doubt.
Look, we talked about Reeves a few weeks ago when somebody asked us about him potentially retiring. I'm pretty confident in my sources that he won't be retiring. But look, you don't give up at Jonathan Weaver.
Glad you replace him.
The guy's a GB legend at the end of the day. And if we released him or didn't re-sign him, Belfast, Sheffield, every other team in the league would try and sign him.
I absolutely agree.
That tells you everything you need to know. I think his experience that he brings to the team is just so crucial and invaluable. He still probably can make a pass that a lot of other players can't make. I agree totally, he's played far too many minutes this season, and that does show even more in maybe the lack of pace sometimes. But looking at the first season that he was here, we played him the perfect amount of minutes, and he's still deadly on the power play. 9 times out of 10, if he's not been overplayed in a game, he will be on your first power play line, and that gives you something extra. If you've got a defenseman that can then be pretty much the 5th attacker on a power play, you're onto a winner. So for me, I just hope he's back next season. And he got the A towards the end of the season due to injuries. Could he be a potential captain next season? I'll throw that one out there just while we're discussing things, but maybe talk about that later on at the end.
Okay, so on to the import defence. I'd like to start actually with Phil Oreskovic. Came in probably one of our latest. He looked, and when he first came, he looked slow and lumbering. I think he improved throughout the season to the point where the Challenge Cup second leg against Belfast was the best game he had in a Panthers shirt. He was just an absolute rock in defence that night. However, I don't feel I've seen enough from him in the time he's been here to say he warrants keeping on for next season.
I think for me, he was a very good pick-up at the time we picked him up. I don't think he put a foot wrong, really. Yes, when he first came, he just looked out of shape, which you're going to be if you pick somebody up at that time of the season.
Chances are they've not been playing.
Chances are, yeah, exactly. The only thing I would say is, with a fresh budget, etc., start the season, all due respect to the Big O, but there's going to be better players out there available. They might cost more, etc., but if you have aspirations and stuff, are there better players out there? I would say that there is, but you also, in every team you need a stay-at-home defenseman that's not going to put a foot wrong. He was that man, so played a big part, like you say, in the Challenge Cup victory. There could be worse players out there that you can get. He put everything, and I tell you one thing that you could say about him as well is he was a team player.
Yeah, absolutely.
Every night I saw him, he was whacking pads. He was there for the team, and in my eyes, which we'll talk about, as we mentioned other players, give me a team player over an individual any day.
Yeah. And I think the other thing is he played with control.
Yeah.
Well, I'm sure we'll get on to other players who didn't, but he got that aggression, but he put it into the game. He didn't let it control him.
Yeah.
He didn't let it overflow into to create other events. And do I want him? I wouldn't be overly upset if he was back next season, but nor would I be overly upset if he wasn't.
Okay, so that leaves one import defenceman left.
Two. Henley and...
Oh, sorry, of course does. Yes. Well, let's start with Eric Werner, of course, returning from the title-winning side. Again, another player whose season was completely blighted by injury, a broken leg. Second weekend in, and then hit with another injury towards the end of the season. But any time he was on the ice, when he came back, great player, absolutely great player.
It's that assurance, it's that quality. Moves the puck well. He's always a threat. In the offensive zone. And it was a huge miss because what we're talking about Norton, the way he was controlling the rest of the defence. He was telling them what the rest of the team. He was telling them what to do. And you need somebody like that. All the great teams have got somebody who'll just right. I'll take the responsibility. This is how we're going to do it. And when that wasn't there, it showed.
I've never seen a player like Werner really, in the sense of how he does manage his teammates in that sense, and I think that was what was so refreshing in his first season, to see a player do that. I know we missed him terribly. Injuries apart, I think he's not had a better season than what he had before, but that's because he's not played. He's probably played about 20 games, if that really. So that might be a little bit harsh, but again, I think he could still perform better than what he did overall. But I think the fact of broken leg, the injury that he picked up towards the end as well, just a little bit, is going to not help in those situations. But I'm unsure whether we'll see him next season, to be honest.
I would like to think that the Panthers will at least offer him a contract, because I think he deserves that, and I think he's one of our best D-men, and I hope he's back.
It would be hard to replace.
Yeah.
If it wasn't. I wouldn't compare them necessarily, but the only player I can remember that we had who got that same sort of assurance was before your time, was Jimmy Pack. I wouldn't say, I'm not comparing Werner to him necessarily.
But Pack had that. He had that assurance. He had that ability on the puck. Absolutely.
He's also the only person I think who could block shots with his body and direct the puck at the same time.
Yeah.
I think as well, depending on obviously how, and I'm not Corey Nielsen, I'm not an ice hockey coach, so I can't really put a roster together. But in my own little hockey world, he complements other players. So a player like that you would want on your roster, somebody that can, control when he's out there. He's been number one penalty taker for us on a few occasions. So he has that in his locker as well. I'd like to see him back. Like I say, I'm not sure about whether he will be or not.
Okay. So one defenseman left, and we all know who it is. So Brent Henley. I can't imagine there's going to be too many positives coming out of this little discussion.
Because you would say, moving on.
Well, for me, selfish, took too many stupid penalties, certainly wasn't a team player, and I think from the reaction of the team to when he was getting into trouble showed that.
Especially later in the season.
The one in Brayhead especially. For me, and it's harsh words, but I think it needs to be said, an absolute liability, and I hope I never see him in a Panthers shirt again.
So you want him back then?
No.
The one positive that I would say about Henley is when he actually just played hockey, he was a good defenseman. But you can't really count how many times he actually played decent hockey. Look, don't get me wrong, I think some of the penalties that he'd taken were absolutely ridiculous, and he deserved everything that got thrown at him. And unfortunately, he just made a rod for his own back, and he got the reputation that he got through his own fault, before anybody says anything. But the one positive, like I said, when he actually did play hockey, I can remember when they announced his signing, and Corey said that he spends a lot of time on the blue line, as in he plays a lot of minutes, and he did. And there were on a few occasions, and I think it was against Belfast, down here, he was throwing his body about and put his body on the line. But look, as people have said to me, he never really finishes a check, and as a D-man, that's pretty much what you're expected to do. One of your first things. I thought I've heard he's on a 2-year deal, uni deal as well. But I think if he was to be back next season, I think you're going to have a lot of disgruntled Panthers fans, and I think that might just seal his fate, unfortunately.
Yeah, I mean the best players out there play on the edge. They've got that fire in the game.
Well, I think Ling was a prime example of that,
and they know where their edge is. They know where their line is before they're going too far. Look at Jason Beckett.
Yes.
the problem with Henley is he doesn't know where his line is. I think, and that means he can't control it when it needs to be controlled. When he played to his best, yes, but there just weren't enough times when that happened, and beyond that, there were times when he was doing stupid things, and he'd be the first one. If I had to list the players I wouldn't want back, he'd be the first one.
Okay. Well, before we move on to look at the forwards, we had a couple of them down here to talk to see what their thoughts were on the season. So here's the thoughts of both Jonathan Boxill and Robert Lachowicz. Delighted to welcome both Rob Lachowicz and Jonathan Boxill to the review show. Just want to ask you a few questions about the season. How do you feel it went?
Obviously, it wasn't as good as it. Well, a lot of the time, I guess it gets compared to last season, and obviously, we struggled throughout the year to kind of keep our play levels high enough, and I think we played well to managed to get the cup, but obviously we would have liked to have done better throughout the whole year. It's not good to finish that many points back, but Belfast had a good year, and unfortunately for us it wasn't that great.
Do you feel it was probably a bit unfair, whereas last year may have been a bit of a monkey on the back? It was so good. You was always going to be compared to that this season. Yeah,
that was one of the problems. Like, obviously we lose 2 games in a row, and it's all compared to last year where we didn't really have a bad spell at all. So it's tough to kind of compete with that from last year, and obviously we didn't. So.
Jonathan, I'll come to you because obviously this is your first professional season, and you've been on the show before saying how much it's meant to you. Obviously, from your point of view, personally, it's probably been a great season.
Yeah, I mean, obviously winning a championship in your first year. Some guys on the team have been playing pro for a decade now, and they've never won a championship. So to do it in your first year is obviously a special thing. On a personal level, as I said last time I was on the show, the unfortunate side of injuries is we might not have had the team which we could have possibly had, but for me it was a great opportunity being able to get way more ice time than I normally would have had, and that really helped my game personally, and I think it proved to Corey and Strax and everyone in the organisation that I can actually I can perform when required to be. But as I said, we're going back to that championship. I think the moment that we got the opportunity to come back in Belfast, and we brought we had that home game here. The atmosphere at the rink that day and the way everyone went into it was just something special. I mean, it was one of those things you can't put your finger on it, but the whole atmosphere in the changing room that day was so driven and passionate towards winning that game and doing what we had to do to first obviously tie it up on aggregate, and then obviously to win the way we did in the shootout with Callis scoring that great shootout goal and Killer making those 3 big saves. It was something really special, so I think there's definitely a positive to take from it. And 1 out of 3 trophies is, I mean, most teams in the league would bite their arm off for it, and that's what everyone else did. The league's obviously a difficult thing to win, but I think obviously 1 out of 3 is not a bad thing whatsoever, and it's a successful year. But the way we did in the Continental Cup in Italy as well, we represented the country and represented the Elite League very well, so there are a lot of positives to take from it. But as Rob said and as you said, there are certainly some question marks that may have been into if you're reaching full potential in regards to injuries and stuff like that, but I think overall it was a pretty decent season.
Rob, just come back to you and the Challenge Cup victory. You've won a few trophies now with the Panthers. How did that one rate compared to all the rest?
Yeah, well, I mean, obviously any championship's good to win, and winning the league the other year is great, and the triple last year, and the playoffs is always good with the atmosphere. But I mean, to come back against a team like Belfast have been this year from three goals down, I'm guessing not many people expected it to be close at all, but we know how we can play in our own rink, and the support we have here is great. So I think everything just came together for that game, and honestly it's one of the best experiences, knowing that you've played so hard and everyone's done everything they can to get the team to tie it up and then go into overtime and the shootout. It was up there.
Obviously, the playoffs came straight after. I mean, only a couple of days after. Had you put so much into that Challenge Cup victory that it actually took something away when it came to the playoff series against Braehead?
I mean, you certainly can't take anything away from Braehead. I think if it had been a closer scoreline, then maybe there would have been that. But they showed that they are a very, very successful team and a very good, very good team that they've put together up there. I think that home game, maybe the system that we tried against them in certain areas was they knew what was coming, maybe. But yeah, well, credit to them. They played a system against us, and it obviously worked. But yeah, everyone's fatigued at the end of the season. I don't think any team can say that they're 100%. You watch the hockey at this weekend. It was tired bodies out there, guys playing with injuries. I know Adam Keefe from Belfast was playing with he was out there on one leg basically, and that's just what you have to do with the playoffs. I mean, obviously it's not as long as most playoffs in North America are, but it's. How many games have we played this year, Rob? 65, 70 something, including pre-season. So, and other teams have done just the same. Maybe not as much in regards to how we play the Continental Cup, but every team's playing with hurt guys right now. And I give credit to where credit's due. Braehead played a system, and they obviously did extremely well against us in the playoffs, and they deserve to be there. And I think they did a great account of the league themselves, the country, and obviously Scottish hockey. It was great to see two Scottish teams here this weekend, and I think they should all be proud of what they did this year.
Okay, so just to wrap up, if you could sum up the season in a few words, how would it be?
I'd say, considering everything that's happened over the year, the amount of games and everything, the injuries obviously didn't help anything, but I think taking everything into consideration, we didn't have a bad year. We got 1 out of the 3 cups. They've gone to 3 different teams, so I mean, it shows that the league was of a high quality. Obviously, even the Scottish teams being up there. So maybe disappointing compared to last season, but I don't think it actually is as bad as people might think.
I'd agree. Jonathan, you?
Well, I think when people talk about last year, I think anything less than 3 trophies people would have been disappointed with. So that was the pinnacle last year. They won everything. So that was a special year for everyone who's involved in it. And I think this year, it's all the entire year that's the first thing everyone said when we got here this year, and it was being compared to in the summer, is they're going to repeat the great Grand Slam season that was last year. But I think overall, as like I said, there were so many positives to take from the year. Individual, I think certain guys had some great years. Franny and Lacko and Saltz, obviously that line together this year was one of, if not the best line in the league. I think Killer, when he wasn't injured, had a great year. There were certain guys who obviously came in and out, and when they were in the organisation, I think they did great things for the team. So there were some great personal achievements this year for certain guys, and as a team, like I said, obviously with injuries it wasn't ideal, but I think when we did come together, and that night when we obviously won the Challenge Cup, it just showed the potential of the team, and obviously with what Corey can do when he recruits the team, which he did. So it was a championship team, it was a championship season. I think it's something to be proud of for everyone in the organisation, and yeah, absolutely. 5 in a row Challenge Cups is certainly something to be proud of, and I know Gary and Corey and Strax and everyone in the organisation that have been building that tradition here for the last 5 years are extremely proud of it and looking forward to making it 6 next year.
Well, thanks for your time, guys. I really appreciate you coming down and chatting to us, and have a good summer.
You too.
So the thoughts of Rob Lachowicz and Jonathan Boxill there, and many thanks for them to take the time out to come down and speak to us. So I suppose we should start with those two as they took the time out. Start with Jonathan Boxill. For me, one of the positives of the season, I think when he signed we wasn't expecting too much, but I think he totally blew away those expectations. One of the most tenacious players I've seen on the ice, just 110%. I know it's a cliche, but all the time in the corners, battling hard for the puck, battling hard for his teammates, trying to make space, and scored a good fair few points, got a few man of the matches for his trouble. An absolute must sign for next season for me.
Definitely. He plays in the way that the fans want. And and when we've spoken to him, he said the same sort of thing. He was a fan as a kid, and that's what he wanted, and that's why he plays like that. And he just gives everything, and he'd be the first to admit he's not the most talented on the team, but you need people like Jonathan Boxill on a team. It's no good. We talk about the difference between team players and individuals. He's another one who's a team player. He goes in there, he grinds, and and that can lift a team as well.
Yeah, for me, I mean, I said it earlier, but you don't give away your Brits, and I think for me, when we signed him, he wasn't signed for this season. You could even potentially say that he might not have even been signed for next season. He's been signed as a Brit for the future.
I mean, I suppose he's only 23, so that's very difficult to forget sometimes.
Yeah, exactly. And I think he said it himself, and he's said it in that interview that we've just shown, that he wasn't expected to play as many minutes as he did, but due to the injuries he has done. And I think, he never let his side down. I think when Paul says he's not the most talented or whatever, give him a few years and
he could well be.
He could well be, and
definitely.
I think that's why potentially he's been signed for. Who knows whether he is back next season? He might not be, so that might be completely false. But I would think he was somebody that is potentially looked at as in like a potential Matt Myers kind of mould. Don't get me wrong, I don't think he's not the same player as Matt Myers. They're very individual players, but in my eyes, he was signed to kind of replace Matt Myers in 3 years.
That sort of all action in your face.
Yeah, willing to get gritty on the boards and really just to fight for every puck. I'd love to see him back next season. He's a decent guy as well, which always helps. I think there's improvement there for him, and I hope to see him back.
Absolutely. So Robert Lachowicz, for me, I would say the best British player in the league. And I know there'll probably be Sheffield fans if they're watching this screaming Robert Dowd at their computer screens, but I'm sorry, for an all-round British player, power play, penalty kill, great 5-on-5, always plays on the line with 2 inputs, and is probably the best player on the line as well. For me, he is the whole package now, and I'm so pleased he's got a contract for next season.
Yeah, well, I mean, for me, what I would say the most impressive things about Lacho this season was the penalty kill that he did. It was mainly him and Franny, and they were so strong on that. I mean, the problem with Lacho is he's had so many good seasons now that the expectation is already there. You expect him to be one of, if not the best Panthers player on the roster, and that's hard to live up to. Has he had the best of his Panthers season so far? When you look at the whole team performance, it's quite difficult to sort of say, because you would automatically go, well, no, last season has to be the best because we won everything, etc. So he must have been playing better. I think the fact that we've had in certain situations a disappointing season kind of lowers what you think of that player, but that doesn't mean that he's not had an absolutely fantastic season. And like I'm glad that he's here next season, because is he a player that's saying he has to go abroad to test himself? That would be my worry, that one day, which you have to let the bird fly the nest sort of thing.
I think he's more than talented enough to try it abroad.
Exactly, and he gives everything to the team. He really is a Panthers boy, and again, he's a nice bloke, and snap your hands off, don't you? Really, very happy that he's back next season.
Okay. Next one we want to look at, Robert Farmer came in, was obviously pre-season with the Panthers, went to try it out in the ECHL. Unfortunately, didn't work out for him in Alaska, and came back to join the team. I am a big fan of Robert Farmer. I like what he brings to the team. His stick handling is excellent. His passing ability is phenomenal. I mean, some of the pucks he puts in for his teammates, some of the plays he makes, you just think, how on earth has he managed that? He's just, I think his skating could probably do with a bit of an improvement, but I think that's the only sort of part of his game that he probably needs some real work on. But what I do like about him is he's straight in there. If someone's in at Kowalski, he's in, digging them, pushing them out the way. I think he should be doing. And I think he is another real team guy, I think.
And we were talking about improvement and change. Look at the way he's improved since the day, when he first came on the scene in Coventry, where he did look like he was just being sent out to fight anything. If they'd have told him to fight the Zamboni, he'd have said how hard, And but so he's improved And that immensely. And again, you know, he's almost playing that Matthew Myers role, and is doing it well.
For me as well, he's only a young lad again as well. He's what, 23, 24,
22, I think he is.
22,
Yeah.
so he's even younger than that. Must be the beard that makes him look older.
He does need a shave, or at least a good trim.
And an haircut, yeah. But no, for me, what I was most impressed with is puck retention and his battling on the boards. I love the little bit of agitator kind of role that he has as well. You know, he likes getting people's faces, cause a bit of trouble. You know, he's not afraid to drop the gloves if needs be as well. But I think he's played that role, which you could say maybe Ling did a little bit last season, in the fact of getting under the opposition's skin and causing a bit of trouble and a bit of aggro. And I think, again, he's another one that's only going to get better as well. And you know, I'd like to see him back and have a full pre-season knowing you're going to be with the Panthers. And you know, then Corey can work his systems, get him onto a line straight away, and hopefully, you know, we might even see more from him. But I'd certainly keep hold of him. You know, you don't get rid of your Brits, I'm afraid to say.
And he gets points, he scores goals, he gets assists. You know, again, another absolute must sign for me. So, final Brit forward we'll look at is David Clark, the captain. Only two words really, Panthers legend, and you can't really say anything else apart from the fact that I think his all-rounder game has improved immeasurably over the past couple of seasons. Not only is he the man who scores 30-40 goals a season, he'll weigh in with 30-40 assists, he'll get back, he's now quarterbacking the power play. He's just... I think his importance to the Nottingham Panthers cannot be overstated.
And I think you're right. It's those improvements that have made him as good a player as he is now. He's always been, you know, he's always had the shooting, the goal scoring, but to add those extra elements has made him the fully rounded player he is today.
I mean, probably the goal that he scored down here, was it against Belfast, where it was an absolute ripper. Was probably the best goal I've seen him score in my time watching the Panthers. Look, he was the captain this season, 10 years testimonial. You know, what can you not say about him that's not already been said? Guaranteed for next season, I would have thought. Yeah, he is. He has.
He's on a contract for next year.
The only thing that I would say is if we're going to be really critical, which we aim to be on this section, is one day he will then score that ripper against Belfast, but then another game it looks like he can't hit a barn door with a banjo. No disrespect to him, but there's slight inconsistency in those things. But don't get me wrong, they far outweigh the consistent far away. And you need somebody like that in your team that's Panthers through and through. He does a lot for the organisation as well. Fantastic guy, really, really polite to speak to. Does anything to help you out. Got to be a must for next season,
yeah. I mean, and the thing is, he'll come back next season and he'll still put away 30-40 goals, 30-40 assists.
I think he's changed his game as well as he has been getting older. I think he used to be known just as that goal scorer. He would guarantee, but I think he's added more, like Paul said, to his game, and he'll do more on that penalty kill, etc.
He's become a complete player. He has become a complete player. And the thing is, for me, absolute shoe-in shirt retirement the day he ever decides to think so. Okay, so on to the imports. We'll start with the returnees, I think. So Matt Francis, again, few smaller injuries. Had a good season, I think. I mean, what you're going to get with Matt Francis. You're going to get 100% all the time. Battle. You know, great penalty killer, great on the power play.
He's great goals.
He's the import to Robert Lachowicz. I think he's the best, and it's no surprise they play on the same line.
Yeah, we talked earlier about partnerships, and look at the one that Lacho and Francis have got. Yeah, I think, if I'm honest, I think the pair of them were overplayed on short-handed.
Yeah,
it was like they must have hated Brent Henley. So it's every short-handed pen, every time they're short-handed, they're the ones who are getting wheeled out first. And it seemed like Corey hadn't got another pair he could go to, which was. And I think that then, you're talking about whether Lacho had his best season or not. You're logging all those minutes on the short-handed as well. It's going to affect the rest of you. But Francis, I'd have him back tomorrow.
Yeah, me too.
Very short and swift for me. Linchpin, one of the linchpins, one of the heartbeats of the side. I'd sign him tomorrow if he could. My only concern is that this was his third season. There's not many imports that stay. So I just hope. I love the guy. I think you need, and for me, he's part of the Panthers. The Corey Nielsen Panthers.
Yes,
as well. And I hope he's back next season. I really do, because
he's the heart. The linchpin.
He's a heartbeat. He's the linchpin of the side.
Yeah, with him and Brandon Benedict.
Yeah, we'll move on to Brandon Benedict now. Perfect link. But everything we've just said about Matt Francis, you can say exactly the same about Brandon Benedict. Yeah. For me, I think he was our player of the season. Every time he's on the ice, he makes things happen.
Well, you only have to look when he wasn't playing for us at the difference.
Yeah, he works so hard.
Imagination.
We've had a lot of hard-working players over the years, but I don't think I've ever seen one who works as hard as what he does. Every time, everything is left out on the ice with Benedict.
And that's what you're going to get.
Yeah, exactly.
You are going to get 110% full-on energy, hard work. And the thing which I saw so much as when we missed him is how much speed he brought to the team.
Yeah, he's really
don't forget that he spent most of the time on D. Played a hell of a lot of games on D, and you miss that. Look. The way to sum up for me, Franny and Benny, is they both came back for the Challenge Cup. Second leg of the final, and it's a team sport, but do not underestimate how much those two players being back brought us success.
Yeah, absolutely. I totally agree. Yeah.
For me again, Benny got to be back next season. Got to be. You have to do everything to sign players like Franny and Benny. You need somebody, and I think Corey's already said this in plenty of interviews. They understand the Panthers. They understand Corey Nielsen's way of playing hockey, and you have to have some of those players in your club. Then you build. You build around K-Wall. You build around like the defensemen that the Brits that we've mentioned, and you build around Benny, Franny, and then the Brits that we've got on the forward lines. That's
An interesting guy I want to bring up next, Jonas Sari, who came in as really injury cover for the Continental Cup and ended up playing, I think, in 50 games, 50 games for us. Only got 3 assists. Now, I like the guy. I thought skating was superb, but. And this is probably going to sound harsh because the guy played his heart out for us, but I would expect a better quality of import at the Nottingham Panthers, and that's no slight on Jonas Sari at all.
Any other season than the one we've just had, he would hardly have played. But now he's, like I say, no disrespect to him, because he came, he gave everything. Every night, I just don't think he's quite good enough for the league.
I think that you could maybe say that's a little bit harsh on the lad. In one way, because he was a spare import.
Yes, absolutely.
He's not you know, one of the first names on the team sheet. You know, he is there to be the spare import if needed. So in that sense, you're not going to go out and get a quality necessarily import. You're not.
No.
You know, he's not a Beauregard.
No.
To get there,
and I totally accept that. But you would expect an import forward who's played 50 games to come away with more than 3 assists.
Yeah, don't get me wrong. But he says you played 50 games. How many minutes has he played in those games?
Yeah, and I think he made that point himself in a recent Evening Post interview. But
you know, if you get 2 shifts, you know, probably even David Clarke, if he had 2 shifts, probably might not score a goal in those 2 shifts. So yes, he's played a lot of games. That doesn't mean that he's had a lot of ice time. And I think a spare import, his skating, you know, he gave everything, you know. And to be fair, when you watch him in warm up, he's a skillful little player. You know, but look, the Elite League is known as, you know, we follow the North American style kind of hockey. You know, it's quite big, it's physical. He's a small, you know, lad. So in that sense, maybe it doesn't work out. But I'd have him back as a spare import, to be honest. You know, I mean, I don't think he's anything else but that really at the moment. But yeah, I'd have him back as a spare.
all right, the silence tells me to move on. I think we'll look at Lynn Lloyd next. Another player. I feel like I keep saying this for everyone, but his season was pretty much blighted by injury. Obviously, got that injury in the Continental Cup in Italy, and was missing for a good 2 months of the season. I was thinking about this today. And I thought, how would you describe Lynn Lloyd? And it's difficult because he never really sort of took a match. He was never the sort of standout player you would see, but at the same time he didn't really make many mistakes from what I remember, and he'd pop up with the odd important goal. The first one in the Challenge Cup final springs to mind immediately. But I don't know, I think if I think about it overall, I was probably expecting a little bit more from him, and I appreciate he towards the end of the season he was playing a lot of his time on D. But
he was a fairly decent defensive forward, really. You know, he put the effort in, but I'm not.
It's hard to it's hard to describe, you know, what type of player he was. Like you say, he never really grabbed the game by the bull of the horns. Yeah, I know what I meant anyway. But, you could just say. I mean, I was surprised that after the injury that we necessarily kept him in, and that might sound harsh, but you know, it happens in this sport that if you get 2 months out in an ice hockey league, especially our league, that's quite a lot of time to have out. And with being a new import, it might be harsh, but we've seen players, you know, that get cut and that's it, you know. So, but I texted you once after he scored that goal in Sheffield away.
Beauty of
Beauty wrist shot, weren't it? Yeah. Saying I think he could be an important player for us down the stretch. But probably never really happened. And I'd be hoping for more actually next season, if I'm totally honest. You know, I'd be liking.
I personally think there's better available, better fits. So, okay. So another one which I think might cause some interesting debate is Matt Ryan. He seemed to polarise opinion of the fan base quite a lot.
He's going to polarise opinion around this table.
I think he certainly is. For my opinion, very much like his namesake Billy, but too many blind alleys. Turned over the puck too much, gave it away.
Utterly frustrating.
Yeah. I've got his effort was incredible. I mean, he put everything, heart and soul, into every shift he made. But I don't know, just a very frustrating player to watch for me, because
I think one of the individuals we were talking about, he'd make a really great move and then just cough the puck up so softly, so easily. So I find him so frustrating to watch. I wouldn't want to see him back next year. Simple as that.
Yeah. Mr. Lord.
And on the other side of the coin,
Exactly. I'd give him another season personally. I think he's better than the player we saw. I saw certain aspects of his game this season for me that would warrant giving him another season with better players. I think look, probably one of the best puck handlers we've had this season for me. I get that he did go down blind alleys sometimes, and there were times where he probably was too individual, but I think that's more to the fact of the team that he had around, the players that he had around him. Personally, I know you can't say a lot, we can all talk about stats and stuff like that, but his stats when he came here were, they were good. They're good stats. I think if we signed a higher caliber of players next season, I'd give him another season personally.
Okay.
But for me, if we were signing a higher calibre of players, he'd be one of the ones I'd want to replace.
Yeah, and I think
there's worse players there that we've had this season
for me.
Yeah, but I'm not saying he's the only one I'd want to replace.
For me, he just never seemed to fit wherever he was playing. He just never seemed to really fit. And
I think you could say that about a lot of the players.
I agree, but. Yeah, I mean, for me, I'm with Paul on this one. I would like to see him replaced if possible. Okay, Lee Salters. Move on to next. Started brilliantly, tailed off a bit, seemed to get it back, and then tailed off again at the end. Although phenomenal in the Challenge Cup second leg. I mean, I think Calvin Effering's probably still feeling that check.
That was I mean, he checked for most of the season. He checked the way that Brent Henley should have been doing. I mean, that Continental Cup weekend, the one here at the arena. He was a massive part of why we went through, why we beat, especially Riga. Because he was going out throwing checks that you could tell they weren't used to. But in a way, I was surprised with what we got from Salters, because it was the usual thing. You get this, always a fighter, this, that, and the other. But he came in with so much more than that. And I think you've got to credit Corey Nielsen as well, because he was working with him, because Corey doesn't just look at players and think, right, that's that player, that's what that player is. He'll work with them. Things. He was working with Salters on, getting him round the net, getting those tips, and he weighed in with a fair few more goals than I thought he was going to.
And I think that's an interesting point there. The fact is that Corey saw something in him, and I've obviously been working with him this season to get him in front of the net. And for me, after hearing that, it was quite disappointing to see him not in front of the net more often. But again, that's down to systems that whoever you're playing against. I think he could have done more, but I would say that he was probably one of the better players that we've had this season. There's definitely potential there for me. I didn't see the check obviously, but he wasn't afraid to put his body about, and he dropped the gloves when needed to, and I wouldn't be disappointed to see him back. I think you need somebody in that kind of mould. Is there somebody out there better that's within our budget, etc., and other things? I'm not too sure. And he obviously was on a good line with Franny and Laco, and if those, if Franny does come back, then that's maybe something that Corey could be thinking, well, do you know what, a bit of consistency next season, them actually on that line and that be their line. There's potential there, so I wouldn't be surprised if we did see him back, to be fair.
I wouldn't be disappointed to see him back. At the same time, I wouldn't be gutted if he wasn't. I think that's my feeling on Salters. But okay, so couple more to go. Greg Jusina.
Started well.
Yeah, I think for me, he came in with a reputation that this guy's a goal scorer. He scores lots of points. Now I was really excited to see what this guy was like. He came in. I think it was at Edinburgh, and wasn't he averaging 4 points a game after his first 2 games? Or something ridiculous.
He got 4 in his first game and 2 in his second.
Yeah, so 3 points a game after the first game, and then just never really had it for me.
For me, he was probably a player that started with the intention of the player that he was, or he is, and for one reason or another just became a symbol of our season, to be honest. Nothing to shout about, really. Yeah, he brought a bit of speed every now and again, a bit of, trickery, but
no end result after
he was okay for when we picked him up. For me, I don't think, for me, he's not a start of the season Panthers player.
No.
I mean, it does have to be said that the person that built him up was Joseph Grimaldi.
True.
So maybe his account had been hacked at that point.
But I'd be disappointed if he was back. I think we can get a lot. I think we can get a lot better. Okay, which leaves one man, which is Peter Callis, another one who came in mid-season. Ridiculously skillful player. Maybe a little greedy. Probably should pass the puck more, but it's not difficult to see why he played 9 games for the Boston Bruins and got 4 points in the NHL. A very, very good player. But I think he needs the right players with him. I think you've said before, you build a team around him.
You'd have to build a team, or at least a line around him. Get people who are going to be on his wavelength, because if you haven't, then he's going to be wasted. Because he needs people to give him the ball. They've got to know that then he's not going to pass it back to them as often as they're going to pass it to him. But so that's what you would need. Is that he's got the skill. In terms of skill, he's probably the best of our forwards. And I would love to see him back, but with a team built. People know what he's going to do.
I can't disagree with that at all. I think yes, I would like to see him back, but as long as the right players come in with him. But yes, I would re-sign him. I would give him another season.
For me, the frustrating thing about Callis for me is that in this side this season he was clearly an individual. He wasn't a team player, and as I said earlier on, I'd rather a team of team players than a bunch of individuals. That aside, he is a quality player. I think we'd actually probably struggle to hold on to him. Actually, if I'm honest, I think he's probably better than the elite league. With all due respect.
I'd agree with that.
Could you then sign the calibre of players to fit in with his type of play? I'm not too sure. For me, I'm not. I don't know whether he's a Panther player in the sense of, I think there's hard work and there's team players and stuff, and I think that's sort of what the Panthers are in my eyes anyway. Don't get me wrong, I'm not knocking any skillful player and I would take them all, but I think it's a hard job to then go, right, well, I'm going to re-sign you, but you must know as Corey Nielsen or a coach that you've got to then sign players that are going to fit in with how you're going to play, and that's a tough job, and I'm not sure whether we would be able to attract and get those type of players So then, would you then have a season of Callis being the superstar on his own once again?
You can't do that because it would be a waste.
Exactly.
He's not going to be able to do it on his own.
You need on a line. You need three forwards that are in unison and are working for each other.
Yeah.
And the down thing that I would say about Callis is that far too many times in my eyes it was about Callis and it was about what he did.
Yeah.
But take nothing away from him. He won us a Challenge Cup alongside Killer. Quality ice hockey player. I mean, if you could sign the players that fits in and he becomes that team player, then by all means I'd love to have him back. But I'm not sure that'll happen.
So that's the last year's squad as it is now looked at. Looking forward, obviously, there's going to be a lot of speculation on our parts. But what do you think needs to happen? What would you like to see for next season?
I think we have to take a core from what we got. I'd bring all the Brits back.
Absolutely, yeah, without doubt.
I'd have Francis, Benedict, Callis, any of the rest, Werner, any of the rest. I'm not really bothered either. Well, there's some I'm not really bothered either way. Some I just don't want to see again. And then you've got to build. Corey's got to start building the team. It's the same as any season. With this season's over, it's done. It was mainly a poor season with a couple of high points, really, that shouldn't be used to paper over the cracks. The injuries, but I don't think the recruitment was right from day one. If I'm honest, I mean, it's a good job we're not talking about all the players we've used, or we would be here
a long time,
and nobody would be watching by the end of it. So I think, in a lot of ways, all we've got to do is what we've done before. Take the bits you want to keep, concentrate on them, and try and build another team.
Well, we know Corey's done it before. He did it last year. There's no reason why he can't do it again. I think what we did miss this season, though, was an out-and-out import sniper. And I think if someone like Bruce Graham or someone of his ilk was available, I'd like to see a player of that calibre come into the team.
You never know. But I mean, for me, it's quite simple. We have to be challenging for the league title. There's no ifs or buts really. Corey needs to, and Strax. Don't forget, they are a team duo. They need to go out there and get us good, solid, quality imports that will mean that we are there challenging for the title. Because we can talk about injuries this season, but realistically, the league campaign was a disappointment, a highly disappointing, season in that sense. Would you be happy if that was that again next season? I certainly wouldn't be happy. We are, one of the big clubs in this league, and we need to be at the top, challenging, and that's the benchmark for me now. We've got the monkey off our back. We should be challenging for titles.
Yeah, I totally agree. Okay. Well, I think we will leave it there, gents. Thanks very much. Hope you enjoyed this slightly different way of looking at the squad. Just 5 months to go until the next season. We'll see you then.